This story is not meant to be heard after midnight.
Lucas drove along BR-23, the highway stretching endlessly under a sky tinged with deep orange and violet hues. The asphalt seemed darker than usual, absorbing the last light of the day, and the trees lining the road swayed with unnatural rhythm, as if whispering secrets. A dense fog began to rise, curling along the roadside, bringing with it an unshakable chill. He noticed a figure standing by the edge of the road, tall, thin, and impossibly still. Its face was obscured by shadows, and it seemed to watch him with intent. Lucas blinked, and the figure had shifted slightly closer. A sudden shiver ran down his spine. His hands gripped the steering wheel tighter as an unsettling sensation filled the car. Something was not right. The radio flickered to life, static crackling, and then a faint, distorted whisper emerged. "Turn, stop, join us." Lucas twisted the dial, but the voice persisted, layered with multiple overlapping tones, as if dozens of whispers screamed at once. The fog thickened, seeping into the edges of the windshield, and Lucas realized the visibility had dropped to almost nothing. Shadows danced along the trees, elongating, bending unnaturally in the corners of his vision. He tried to speed up, but the car seemed heavier, sluggish, as though the very road resisted him. Every mile marker he passed seemed to regress, numbers repeating in an eerie loop. Panic surged as the figure reappeared closer, now reflected faintly in the rear-view mirror. Though Lucas had not glanced back, the whispers intensified. The souls never leave. The road claims all. A cold pressure pressed against his chest, almost tangible. He could feel the presence of unseen watchers, hidden in the fog, moving silently alongside his vehicle. Every instinct screamed to flee, yet the highway seemed infinite, bending and twisting around him with a malevolent purpose. The trees leaned inward, branches forming shapes that resembled faces twisted in eternal torment. Shadows pooled along the edges of the road, dripping like ink into the asphalt. The figure raised an arm, pointing toward a darkened curve ahead. Lucas's pulse raced. He was caught between rationality and the primal fear gripping him. Lucas's heart pounded as he approached the curve the figure had indicated. The fog thickened, swallowing the road ahead, and his headlights barely penetrated the mist. A feeling of suffocating dread pressed down on him, heavy and unrelenting. The radio emitted sudden bursts of static, layered with whispering voices. "Do not turn. Do not resist." The road watches. Suddenly, a figure appeared directly in the middle of the lane, semi-transparent, flickering like a broken image. Lucas slammed the brakes, tires screeching, but the figure remained motionless. He blinked, and it was gone, leaving only a lingering chill that crept into the cabin. Branches tapped lightly against the car, though the surrounding forest appeared still. Lucas's hands trembled. Every instinct screamed that he should flee, yet the car barely responded. The highway twisted unnaturally, forming shapes and loops that defied logic. Shadows moved in synchronization with the whispers, as if the fog itself was alive. He tried to rationalize, perhaps hallucinations from exhaustion or the long stretch of highway playing tricks on him, but a sudden glance in the rearview mirror froze him in place. The road behind reflected not his headlights, but dozens of glowing, empty eyes staring at him, peering from the darkness. A faint silhouette appeared on the roadside. A woman in white, motionless, head tilted unnaturally. She seemed to float above the ground, shadows pooling beneath her feet. Lucas's pulse quickened, a cold sweat covering his body. The whispers now carried a chilling clarity. The souls are waiting. Your turn comes. The car's engine sputtered, lights flickering. Every object in the cabin appeared distorted, as if reality itself wavered. Lucas gripped the wheel, trying to focus, but the figure reappeared, closer now in the fog, stretching impossibly, leaning toward him. The air grew colder, dense with a presence he could feel but not see fully. The highway was no longer a simple stretch of asphalt. It had become a corridor of the damned, a passage where reality bent to a sinister will. Every mile marker, every shadow, every reflection in the fog whispered his name. Lucas's heart pounded as he approached the curve the figure had indicated. The fog thickened, swallowing the road ahead, and his headlights barely penetrated the mist. A feeling of suffocating dread pressed down on him, heavy and unrelenting. The radio emitted sudden bursts of static, layered with whispering voices. Do not turn. Samach all, do not resist. The road watches. Suddenly, a figure appeared directly in the middle of the lane, semi-transparent, flickering like a broken image. Lucas slammed the brakes, tires screeching, but the figure remained motionless. He blinked, and it was gone, leaving only a lingering chill that crept into the cabin. Branches tapped lightly against the car, though the surrounding forest appeared still. Lucas's hands trembled. Every instinct screamed that he should flee, yet the car barely responded. The highway twisted unnaturally, forming shapes and loops that defied logic. Shadows moved in synchronization with the whispers, as if the fog itself was alive. He tried to rationalize, perhaps hallucinations from exhaustion or the long stretch of highway playing tricks on him, but a sudden glance in the rearview mirror froze him in place. The road behind reflected not his headlights, but dozens of glowing, empty eyes staring at him, peering from the darkness. A faint silhouette appeared on the roadside. A woman in white, motionless, head tilted unnaturally. She seemed to float above the ground, shadows pooling beneath her feet. Lucas's pulse quickened, a cold sweat covering his body. The whispers now carried a chilling clarity. The souls are waiting. This Gisai. Your turn comes. The car's engine sputtered, lights flickering. Every object in the cabin appeared distorted, as if reality itself wavered. Lucas gripped the wheel, trying to focus, but the figure reappeared, closer now in the fog, stretching impossibly, leaning toward him. The air grew colder, dense with a presence he could feel but not see fully. The highway was no longer a simple stretch of asphalt. It had become a corridor of the damned, a passage where reality bent to a sinister will. Every mile marker, every shadow, every reflection in the fog whispered his name. Lucas's pulse quickened as the woman in white appeared again, this time standing in the middle of the lane. Her face was pale and featureless, her hair flowing unnaturally. The car's headlights barely illuminated her, and she seemed to float above the asphalt, swaying gently. The radio emitted bursts of static, punctuated by whispers. Do not stop. The souls are waiting. Join them. Lucas's hands shook on the steering wheel. Every instinct screamed to swerve, but the road looped unnaturally, forcing him to slow, his vision blurred with exhaustion and fear. The fog wrapped around the car like a living entity, pressing in, limiting visibility. Trees leaned inward, branches scraping against the windshield, leaving streaks that resembled fingers reaching for him. Shadows danced in synchronization with the whispers, elongating unnaturally along the roadside. Lucas glanced in the rearview mirror. The woman appeared there as well, closer now, her head tilting unnaturally, eyes glowing faintly. Panic surged. He slammed the brakes, but the vehicle responded sluggishly. The road stretched endlessly, curving into itself, impossible geometry that trapped him in a corridor of dread. The whispers layered into a cacophony. The highway remembers. The souls never leave. Join us. The temperature dropped suddenly, frost forming on the windshield. His breath fogged inside the cabin. Every reflection in the mirrors showed not his own face, but dozens of ghostly faces, screaming silently. Suddenly, the woman in white stepped closer. Shadows pooled beneath her, stretching across the road, coiling toward the tires like ink. Lucas realized the spirits of the lost travelers were not just observing. They were guiding him, herding him toward the next inevitable encounter. The road ahead was a blur, impossible to navigate. Every instinct screamed to flee, but the entities controlled perception, warping space and time. Every mile marker repeated, every tree bent unnaturally, and every shadow pulsed with malevolent intent. The mile markers began to vanish as Lucas drove. Numbers repeated, then disappeared entirely, leaving stretches of road with no indication of distance or direction. The fog thickened, curling into unnatural patterns, resembling twisted faces screaming silently. Shadows pooled along the sides of the road, moving like liquid. The radio crackled incessantly, layering whispers over distorted static. You cannot leave. The road watches join us. Lucas's hands trembled as the steering wheel resisted his grip. The asphalt beneath the tires seemed to ripple subtly, bending perception itself. A faint figure appeared briefly in the fog. A man in tattered clothes had turned unnaturally, following him with glowing eyes. Each blink brought him closer. The shadows around the car moved independently, stretching into the tires and fenders, tethering him to the haunted highway. The woman in white appeared again, now closer, swaying, her pale face featureless. She raised an arm toward him, shadows pooling and stretching along the asphalt. Panic surged, and Lucas slammed on the brakes, but the car responded sluggishly, as if the road itself resisted escape. Trees leaned inward, branches scraping and tapping on the windshield, forming twisted, almost human-like shapes. Every reflection, rearview mirror, side mirrors, glint from the dashboard, showed distorted faces staring back at him, silent screams frozen in time, the whispers layered into a chaotic chorus. The souls never leave. The highway claims all. Surrender. The cold pressed against him like a living weight. He realized the spirits of previous travelers were guiding him, pushing him deeper into the fog and toward the inevitable encounter with the highway's dark essence. Every instinct screamed for Lucas to flee, but the highway's malevolent intelligence warped reality, bending perception, stretching time. The fog thickened, shadows danced, and the entities waited, patient, unyielding, hungry for the next lost soul. Fog enveloped the car completely. Lucas's headlights cut through only a few meters ahead. The highway no longer appeared linear. Curves bent impossibly. Trees leaned inward. Shadows pooled unnaturally. Every reflective surface inside the car, mirrors, dashboard screens, even the windshield, flickered with ghostly faces. The whispers grew frantic. You cannot leave. The road remembers. The souls are watching. His hands shook on the wheel, pulse racing. Branches scraped against the car as if reaching for him. Leaves whispering secrets he could not comprehend. Figures appeared in the fog, some floating, some standing. Faces featureless or distorted. Each blink brought them closer. Shadows extended toward the tires, brushing along the asphalt. Panic clawed at Lucas's mind, but the car felt sluggish, trapped, as if the highway itself resisted his escape. The woman in white drifted alongside, swaying unnaturally. Her presence chilled the air. Whispers layered into an unintelligible chorus. The road behind seemed to loop endlessly. Mile markers repeated. Trees bent. Shadows twisted. Reality itself was warping. The spirits of previous travelers appeared, semi-transparent. Following him silently, they guided him, pushing him deeper into the fog, toward some unseen convergence point. Every instinct screamed to flee, but the highway controlled perception, bending space, stretching time. The fog thickened, moving like living smoke, curling around the car. Shadows twisted into grotesque shapes, reaching for him. Lucas realized the highway was no ordinary road. It was a corridor of lost souls feeding on fear, and now he was part of its prey. Lucas drove cautiously as the fog thickened into an almost tangible wall of gray. The asphalt beneath his tires seemed to ripple, bending and curving in ways that defied logic. Every turn appeared to lead him back to the same point, a loop with no exit. Shadows danced along the edges of the road, elongating unnaturally, stretching toward the car as if trying to grasp him. Glancing in the rearview mirror, Lucas saw hundreds of glowing eyes staring back at him, scattered across the fog. Each blink multiplied them, reflecting the souls trapped along the highway. A distorted whisper emerged from the radio. "You cannot leave. The souls demand you." The sound was layered, as if dozens of voices spoke in unison, some pleading, some laughing cruelly. The woman in white appeared again, this time stepping onto the hood of the car. Lucas slammed on the brakes, but the vehicle barely slowed. The temperature dropped sharply. Frost formed along the edges of the windshield. Branches tapped relentlessly against the car, forming shapes that resembled skeletal hands reaching for him. He realized the highway was not just a road. It was a living entity, a corridor that guided the lost, feeding on fear. Every mile marker repeated endlessly. Trees leaned inward. Shadows stretched across the asphalt like ink, and the fog moved with intent, curling into the cabin, pressing against his chest. Every instinct screamed to escape, but the car responded sluggishly, caught in the malevolent will of the highway. Figures from the fog appeared beside him, floating, staring with blank faces, their presence oppressive and cold. The whispers layered into a cacophony. "The souls never leave. Join us. Surrender." The road's end remained invisible, concealed by layers of fog and shadow. Every reflection in the mirrors showed faces not his own, twisted and screaming silently. Lucas gripped the wheel tighter, heart hammering, knowing he was trapped in a corridor where reality itself bent to the will of the highway. The fog thinned briefly, revealing dozens of figures on both sides of the road. They were semi-transparent, gaunt, their eyes hollow and glowing faintly. Lucas could feel their gaze, cold and oppressive, pressing against his chest. Whispers surrounded him. "You cannot leave. The highway claims all. Join us." The woman in white appeared beside the car, floating effortlessly, her featureless face tilted toward him, and shadows pooled beneath her, stretching along the asphalt. Each blink revealed more figures, emerging from the fog, moving silently alongside, behind, and sometimes ahead of the car. Lucas's pulse raced. Every instinct screamed to flee, but the vehicle responded sluggishly, as though the highway resisted escape. Trees leaned inward, branches scraping, forming twisted shapes resembling hands, faces, skeletal limbs. The asphalt rippled subtly beneath the tires, bending perception. The radio emitted a sudden burst of static, layering hundreds of overlapping whispers. The souls never leave. Surrender. Join us. Lucas gripped the wheel tighter, heart pounding, sweat running cold down his spine. His headlights barely illuminated the figures, but their presence was undeniable, heavy with malice and despair. The highway seemed alive, warping space, bending reality, feeding on his fear. Every mile marker repeated, shadows pooled, the fog swirled, and the spirits of lost travelers guided him inexorably toward an unseen destination. The woman in white raised her arm, pointing forward. Lucas realized the path was a trap, a corridor of inevitability. Escape was impossible. The whispers layered into an almost tangible pressure, echoing inside his skull. Every instinct screamed resistance, but the highway demanded surrender. As he continued, the figures appeared closer, hovering over the car, around it, inside reflections in mirrors, appearing in glimpses through the fog. Every second stretched into eternity, and Lucas felt himself being drawn into the highway's malevolent will, part of a never-ending procession of lost souls. Lucas's grip on the steering wheel tightened as the fog closed in, wrapping around the car like a living shroud. The highway no longer appeared linear. Curves twisted impossibly. Mile markers repeated endlessly. Trees leaned inward. Shadows elongated unnaturally. The whispers became louder, overlapping into a cacophony. You cannot leave. The souls demand you. Surrender. Figures emerged from the fog, floating beside and behind the car. Hollow eyes reflected in the mirrors, glowing faintly. Their presence pressed upon him, cold and relentless. The woman in white appeared once more, floating above the asphalt, her arm extended, directing him toward an unseen destination. Branches scratched against the vehicle, leaving eerie shapes resembling skeletal hands. The radio crackled with static, layered whispers overlapping, as if hundreds of voices spoke simultaneously. The fog moved with intent, curling inside the cabin, pressing against Lucas's chest. Every instinct screamed to flee, but the vehicle resisted, sluggish, as though the highway itself held him captive. Shadows pooled along the asphalt, crawling toward the tires. Reflections in mirrors showed distorted, screaming faces, none of them his own. The highway's grip was total. Every turn, every stretch of road, every shadow guided him deeper into the fog. The spirits of lost travelers moved silently alongside, watching, waiting. The whispers intensified. Join us. The souls never leave. Surrender. Lucas's vision blurred with fear. Every blink brought the figures closer. Every heartbeat echoed with dread. The highway was alive, a corridor of the damned, feeding on his terror. Escape was impossible, and the air thickened with malevolent intent. He realized he was now part of the endless procession, a soul trapped forever on the road. The fog swallowed him, the shadows closed in, and the whispers became deafening. Lucas's vision blurred as the fog thickened to impenetrable gray. The highway stretched endlessly, bending, looping, and twisting. Shadows danced along the edges, forming shapes that resembled faces frozen in terror. The whispers from the radio layered into a deafening chorus. The souls never leave. Asaya Pathi As, join us, surrender. Figures emerged fully from the fog, floating alongside, behind, and in front of the car. Their hollow eyes bore into him, pressing on his mind. The woman in white appeared once more, her featureless face tilted toward him, arm extended, directing him toward an unseen end. The road beneath the tires rippled subtly, bending perception, creating an endless labyrinth. Every mile marker repeated. Trees leaned inward, shadows elongated unnaturally, and the fog swirled like living smoke. Reflections in mirrors showed faces that were not his own, screaming silently. Branches scraped the car relentlessly, forming twisted shapes like skeletal hands. Every instinct screamed to flee, but the vehicle responded sluggishly, trapped by the highway's malevolent will. Lucas felt himself being drawn deeper, guided by the spirits of lost travelers into a never-ending procession. The whispers intensified, layering over the sound of tires on asphalt. The souls are waiting. You cannot escape. Surrender, cold pressed against his chest. The air thickened, and reality itself seemed to warp. The highway was alive, feeding on fear, bending space and time to trap the next lost soul. As the fog swallowed the car completely, Lucas understood that escape was impossible. The road never ended, the shadows never ceased. The souls of the damned moved endlessly alongside him. The highway was eternal, and now he was a permanent part of its cursed procession.
If you're still here, it means it found you too.